My name's Kelley Jones. What's my title? I have to think about that. I'm a partner in four different companies, sole ownership of Kelley Jones Hospitality, which is my S corporation that everything kind of funnels up through. How did I start in hospitality? Really simple. I was 14 years old and I was on a little league baseball team and I wanted cleats because all the kids had cleats and I didn't. I was playing in sneakers. And I asked my dad for the money, and he said, go get a job. So I started washing dishes in a Greek diner in New Jersey. And if you don't know the Greek diners in the New York, New Jersey area, they have everything from scrambled eggs to lobster tail available 24 hours a day, big cake wheels, and they were always busy. So I started washing dishes and then became a busboy and then a line cook. And that's kind of how it all started. That was over 40 years ago.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. So do you mind if we just jump right into some student questions? Because some of the kids emailed them to me who are live here on the chat. Just go ahead and throw them in the chat and I'll let you unmute. And you guys should be able to ask. One of the kids wanted to know, can you share some of the challenges and rewards of opening a restaurant on the Las Vegas Strip? Because this is kind of like Mecca for hospitality. What was that like?
Well, that's what brought me to Las Vegas. In fact, I moved to Las Vegas in 1998, kicking and screaming, saying I'll go for 1 year from New York City and then I'm moving back. Because, my perception of Las Vegas was, Sin City. I get off the plane drunk. I'm up for 72 hours and I get back on the plane to go home drunk. And it certainly wasn't like that at all. In fact, I moved here to open Mandalay Bay. And now this is again 1998. So this is before the Venetian, the Palazzo, Wynn, Encore, Trump, City Center, Cosmopolitan, Planet Hollywood, Paris. I mean, it predated all of those casinos. And I had four restaurants and a nightclub that I was the director of operations for. And ended up staying 5 years, moved away for four, and then came back in 2007. I've been back ever since. But, opening up on the strip was a lot different when I moved here in that you could open up almost anything and it was going to be successful. Now there's a lot of competition. And so you really have to have a lot of things together. You've got to have your marketing, you've got to have your cash reserves, and you've got to be good because there's a lot of great competition. I mean, this is the mecca for the celebrity chef. This is the mecca for, some of the best fine dining restaurants. I have a restaurant on the strip right now with partnership with Emmett Smith. Emmett, for those of you who don't know, you probably didn't see him play back in the 90s, but he was a running back for the Dallas Cowboys. And here, 22 years later, after he retired, he still holds the record for the most rushing yards and the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL. And he's just such a great guy. It's a steakhouse. Check average is about $110 per person. So it's not cheap. But it's a fantastic experience, I think.
That's great. We actually had some kids send in a couple questions regarding how you worked with Emmett Smith and how his vision aligned with your goals. Like, how did you guys come together with that as far as like designing and catering a restaurant around somebody?
Yeah, I mean, great question, by the way. Emmett is, certainly had his, concept of what he wanted to do. It's a new American restaurant is what we call it, but it's an upscale steak and seafood restaurant. We have a sushi bar, a raw bar. So, a lot of big steak selections. Emmett did not want it to be a sports bar. He was adamant he wanted it to be a finer dining restaurant. We are actually in the process of working on the second floor, which will be a sports bar, more of a tailgate party. So that'll be a completely different look and feel. Downstairs, we came in. So, we're the management company that operates it day to day. We're not the ownership. I have restaurants that I have ownership in. But we're responsible for, hiring, training the staff, creating all the systems, procedures, processes. Um, and then we operate day to day so that the day-to-day management team and chefs report to my company. And so we're the ones, in the middle of the night, if the plumbing bursts, we get the call, not Emmett.
Yeah, you take care of the day to day while he takes care of the smile out front, right? So
And when he comes in, it's great because he's such a good guy. He takes pictures, signs autographs. he's there, he's, touching tables and talking to people. So he's not silent when he's in there.
Well, he certainly picked a great partner with you. You had touched on something very interesting. You had mentioned Sin City, and you are very active with the philanthropic world in Las Vegas. And we know that Sin City can actually be changed to Grace City in a way that there's a lot of people in need for faith and for help in the city of Las Vegas. Can you touch a little bit and tell the kids a little bit about your work with Hope for the City?
Yeah, we just got back from the food pantry this morning, actually. It was nice and cold, 38 degrees. Um, So, you're right. It is a city of grace. There is, a big faith-based community and some great churches here. In fact, that's how you and I met, Ralph, through, Central Church, which has been my home church since I came to faith 14 years ago. It's, a great philanthropy. Hope for the City started when the pandemic hit. So the governor shut down the state on March 17th of 2020. Uh, I had shut down 12 of 16 restaurants, laid off over 300 people. And I'm not the guy that can sit home and watch TV all day. That's just not what I'm made of. So got an email that we're looking for volunteers to come out and operate a pop-up food pantry on the 18th. So the day after the city shut down, we launched Hope for the City and started pop-up food pantries. And that became my full-time job. So every morning, 5 days a week, I was at the pantry, and most afternoons I was on the phone trying to raise money and funds and find food to outfit the pantries. Um, Yesterday marked 252 weeks in a row that we've been operating these pantries. We're 8 weeks away from 5-year anniversary. And there's still great need in the valley for, food insecurity. So, we get our food from a lot of different sources, but it's like a drive-through food pantry where it's kind of like an episode of Chopped, if you've ever seen Chopped on the Food Network. You don't know what's coming off the truck, but we put things together and we are able to feed family of 4 or 5 for a week with the food that they can get during one of our pop-ups. And we still have four. We were doing 26 a week when the pandemic first started. And to kind of put it into perspective, the largest food pantry in Southern Nevada gave out 800,000 pounds of food in 2019. From March to December of 2020, we gave out over 8 million pounds of food. And to date, we've given out over 22 million pounds of food over the last, almost 5 years.
Now, do we have numbers as far as like an estimate to how many people have been served through Hope for the City?
Yeah, we're coming up on 2 million people. So I think we're about 1.85 million, over 600,000 families. Because we were government certified and regulated, because it was shelter in place back in 2020, you couldn't leave your house unless it was, for something, that was deemed necessary. But we were government sanctioned. So the way we know all of our numbers is every car that pulls up, we have to get their name, their address, their zip code, and how many people are in their family. So that's how we're able to track how many people, how many families, and how many pounds of food.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I want to touch a little bit on your Christian faith because I know how important that is to you and what a big deal that is. Can you kind of touch up on how has faith played a role as far as maintaining a balance in such a high demanding career as yours?
Yeah, I think you give it all to God. You give it all to God. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And there's not a better saying because it's true. I mean, any major decisions in business and in my personal life and my family life, you put it all to God. And I didn't grow up with any religion. In fact, my first church service was a Catholic wedding where they did a mass before the wedding, and I'm like, wow, this is church. I'm bored out of my mind. And I was blessed enough to marry a faith-based wife, and for the first, gosh, 8 years of our marriage, every Sunday, come to church. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Go to church, have fun, enjoy it. You do, I'm doing me. And I thought, I had my path straight in my life. And then one Sunday, her sisters were out in Vegas visiting us. And she's like, we're going to brunch after church. Come with us. And I'm like, okay, I'll meet you at brunch. And she said, no, come to church. And so I went. And so a little bit of background about me. I have two huge passions. One is food and beverage, and one is music. I have over 7,000 albums. I've been collecting music since I was, 12 years old, 5,000 CDs. Of course, everything's digital now, but I still have all this, physical music. And one of the great things about living in Las Vegas is everybody comes here. So you get to see concerts all the time. Well, so I go to this church, Central Christian. And I walk in, we sit down, and first thing comes out, the worship team comes out, and it was amazing. It was like a rock concert for God, and that got me first of all. And then I do a lot of public speaking, and I get paid to go around and do seminars and stuff like that. So, I always appreciate a good communicator. And then Pastor Judd came out and delivered a message, and I was like, wow. And I started coming. So every week after that, I'd come back and I'd come back. And 6 weeks after I started coming to church, my wife had to fly home to Pittsburgh. And I went to church. And I left church by myself, got in the car, and I called my wife and I started weeping. That's when the Holy Spirit just filled me. And I knew that I was a child of God. And I got baptized probably a year or two after that. And just God has just blessed us in so many ways. We were fortunate enough to go to Israel in 2019 with the church group and change your life, when you're walking in the footsteps of Jesus and you're, where he is, and you go to Garden of Gethsemane and there's clover that's got red dots on it. And, there's only one other place in the world that has that kind of clover. And Garden of Gethsemane, if you know your Bible, that's where Jesus was when he was arrested, and he was sweating blood. And now, the Garden of Gethsemane has these clovers that have, drops of red on them. And, you just, experience stuff like that. It is just nothing better. So, I mean, I just praise God every day, and pray through so many different things that, I never did. And I got to tell you, he blesses you. Started tithing faithfully about 8 years ago and watched my business just explode, because everything's God's anyway. So whatever he blesses you with, you give 10% right back to him, and just watch how it'll work in your life. It's just nothing has been so impactful as really starting to tithe and give back. And, it's not, going to church. I have a son now who's 9 who, has grown up in church. Watching him is just such a blessing. He's in private Christian school since preschool. And, Ralph, I don't know if you were there, but, I want to tell this story because, as a parent, you beat yourself up all the time over, did I do the right thing? Am I saying the right thing, with my kid? Because, you really truly know that love when you have a child of your own. And my son has now, grown up, and half of his life, watched waking up and his father not being home because I'm out at the food pantries. I mean, we started it when he was 4. And so, for a year, 5 days a week, he'd wake up and I wasn't there. And now it's a couple days a week he wakes up. So he's always wanted to go to the food pantry. And I'm like, you got to be older, you got to be older. And so the day before Thanksgiving, he had his, he was off school. And so we brought him to the food pantry, and they were great, showing him what we do. And I thought, at 9 years old, having him really understand and learning how to, help other people and give back. And I got to tell you, my whole year was made on that Wednesday before Thanksgiving when one of the site leads, we always get together, before we start giving out the food, after we pack everything up and get it ready, and we do what we call a lineup where everybody gets together and we give announcements, what's going on in the church, what's going on, and hope for the city, and then we finish with prayer. Well, the site lead said, it's the day before Thanksgiving. Let's go around. Let people, what are you thankful for? And my son's hand just shot up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what's he going to say? And, she's going around and asking people what they're thankful for. And she gets to my son and she says, what are you thankful for? And he says, I'm thankful that Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. Oh. And I look over at Ray, who and Ray looks at me and he goes, and I'm like, I know. It's like, wow, that's what my son was thankful for, that he knows at his young age that God is real, God exists, and it's we're all commissioned to be disciples and spread the good news of Jesus to the world. And I'm new in my journey, 13 years. My son is 9, and it's like, wow, this is just a precious gift.
just pushing that kindness. I mean, you guys have collectively fed over 2 million people. So it's so powerful. Like, because there's 3 million people in Las Vegas, and to be able to wrap your head around that, it's such a large undertaking. So we have a question. This is from, and thank you for sharing about your faith, and thank you for sharing about your testimony. It's very powerful, and it's clear from what you shared at the beginning of your career to see it kind of evolve and shape into something probably not preconceived when you set out on your career. We have a question from Alicia, and Alicia's in Spain. You can unmute to ask, my friend.
Hi, I'm Alicia
Hi,
from.
Alicia.
Um, I'm grateful to hear from you. Thank you for sharing your experience. I would like to ask you, do you have a method to use leftover food in good condition and take it to people in need?
Yeah, thanks for the question. We typically go through all the food that we get at the pantry. If there's anything left over, we bring it over to the church where we're able to either save it for the following pantries. But we're pretty good at what we call pantry math, where, we get the food and we see how many cars are lined up. I mean, the largest, the record is 1,201 cars in one pantry in one day. It was about 8 weeks into the pandemic. We were running 3 pantries a day, and they were all doing between 800 and 1,000 cars. Now we've got 4 pantries going, and we're doing between 300 and 400 cars per pantry. But we get pretty good at the math to be able to go through, all the food and, excuse me, be able to actually give out all the food. But we have great partnerships with local vendors, the casinos, and Feeding America, which is part of the Department of Agriculture here in the United States.
Would you have any advice for these kids wherever they're at in the world, as far as if they want to become like involved in their community in civic duty or philanthropy? What are some things that they can do to kind of get involved? Would you recommend?
Well, I think most, urban areas have a homeless or a food relief organization. So you can certainly, sign up and volunteer there. Long before I ever became faith-based, we were doing things like signing up at Catholic Charities and going, to help feed, some of the homeless. I would say almost every, city has, you know, uh, um, charities or government, sponsored, events that they do to support, the marginalized people that are in your cities.
Great advice. Great advice. And I always ask this. This will be the final question before we let you go, because I know it's getting kind of late for our kids in Eastern Europe. But I always, and I wanted to see if in your answer here, if you could kind of share with us your belief in what defines success now, because you're decades into your career. What advice would you have for these kids as they go off into the world and kind of figure out what they want to do, whether they want to work in hospitality or something else? What advice would you have for them?
I got to go back because this will be part of the answer. Hope for the City. The reason we call it Hope for the City is, we're not just providing food, we're providing hope. That would be one thing that, I would say anybody that's, looking to embark on a career, you've got your typical worldly ways of, seeing what success is, whether it's money or position or power or that stuff. Truth be told, when I was younger in my career 20, 30 years ago, that's what I wanted. I wanted money, position, power. I wanted a title. I wanted that business card that said, general manager or director or something on it. And as I've gotten older, that stuff's so not important because, I think really, God gives you in the portion that you can handle it. And, it's nothing more important than giving back. And, what are people going to say about you, at your funeral or, in your old age? And, to me, success is my son still wants to hang out and play with me. That, my wife, I come home to a loving family and my wife is my best friend. Um, you know, certainly, making money is great to be able to live well and comfortably, but I'm a huge proponent in tithing. I mean, my wife laughs at me because, she gives electronically, I still, I get a check in my account. I take out my checkbook. I write a check out. I pray over it. I tear that check from my checkbook. And then when I drop it into the bucket, I pray over it again because, I just want, God has blessed us in so many ways, really it's a blessing to be, blessed to be a blessing. And so, I would say, success is more than just, money and position. I think success is really what are you doing to give back to people? Because God's commandment's very simple. Love God, love people. I mean, it really, comes down to that. And so what are you doing to help, your friend, your family, a perfect stranger, love God, love people. That's to me a success.
Do you mind if we ask one more student
Sure,
question?
yeah, go for it.
This is, yeah, okay. So I'd be remiss if I didn't let her ask. Chloe is in France, I think. Chloe, you can unmute to ask. You had a pretty good question. She might be having, there you go, buddy.
Hello, Mister. I am Chloe. I just had one question. Do you have any recommendation of books that can drive us towards our own success in business? Thank you very much.
Sure. I'll pepper that with a couple things. C.S. Lewis and Dale Carnegie. Anything that they write, I recommend reading. Dale Carnegie for business. Uh, I think, really, I know a lot of you are students, so, let me give you this background. I graduated high school 258 out of 262, four from the bottom of my high school class. I was horrible in institution education because they taught most schools, when I was coming up is visual and oral. And I'm a kinesthetic learner, show, do, show, do. And that's why I've been very successful in the restaurant business because it's not overly complicated. You just, get in there and somebody will show you how to go. I went from dishwasher to prep cook to line cook to sous chef to executive chef to general manager to multi-unit operator to vice president to president of companies before I started my own group of companies 18 years ago. So I really think, life's experiences is just the best thing. When people say, I'm going to go to, it's a lot different. When I got in the restaurant business, you did it until you got a real job. And now with, celebrity chefs and Food Network and Food TV and all the stuff, it's cool to be in the restaurant business. But, when people who are, looking to go and take out big loans to go to culinary school, I'm like, go work in a bunch of different restaurants. When I was a chef in a restaurant, I always wanted to learn how to make sushi. So I went and it's a French term called stage. I went and staged in a sushi restaurant for a month for free, just so he could teach me how to cut the fish and roll the sushi. So I think, life experiences are as equally as important as any books and class and everything else that you will take. And I'm not advocating don't go to school. It just wasn't for me. I'm advocating, kind of pepper your education with, hands-on education as well.
Wonderful, wonderful advice. All right, Kelley, before I let you go, traditionally what I do before I end the meeting for all and exit out of this, I let everyone unmute. And can we, around the world, can we all say thank you to Kelley Jones from Kelley Jones Hospitality for taking
Thank
the
you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
It was a pleasure, Ralph.
Thank you.